So to help break down the legal and political impact of what we're hearing in today's impeachment proceedings, let's bring in our panel. Axios co-founder and executive editor Mike Allen, and defense attorney and former prosecutor Bob Bianchi. Bob, let's start with you. It was the first chance for the president's team to take a swing at the ball here. In your experience as a prosecutor and a defense attorney, how'd they do?
Look, as a trial lawyer, I was very impressed. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought that they mapped it out well. They weren't bombastic. They weren't, overly officious. They did not bring in the Bidens, which I think is a smart play. I found myself, John, saying, you know what? After today, I don't know if I'd go back to my office as a prosecutor or a defense lawyer, in this particular case, and say we may need to change the strategy and not go forward much longer here, because all this comes down to is, are they going to get those 3 or 4 Republican senators to ask for witnesses? And all they're trying to do is to make sure that they present enough information where they can pass those senators the straight face test and not calling for those witnesses. And then in my mind, it's going to be a done deal because we already know the die is cast. Unlike a jury in a criminal case, we know what the senators are inclined to do, the Republican senators. So less is more in this situation.
Mike, are you hearing that there are 3 or 4 Republican senators who would be inclined to vote for witnesses?
At the moment, you could maybe count 3 if you squint. Our reporting is showing not saying 4 so far. Top Senate aides tell Axios that they just don't see getting to 4 at this moment. But picking up on that point about the bombast, this was a very lawyerly argument today. My colleague David Nather was in the Senate gallery, and he was saying that he was expecting them to burn down the House today. But in fact, here on Fox, we saw the president's lawyers making pretty conventional arguments, sticking to their points that there's holes in the case. There's testimony you weren't heard, which I thought was a very effective device that they didn't show you, and saying that they're going to be making their own legal arguments in the days ahead.
One of those legal arguments, Bob, came from one of the president's lawyers who said, look, the president is being charged with obstruction of justice here for not providing witnesses or not answering requests for documents. Those requests came from the Judiciary Committee. They were not authorized by the entire House. They were essentially authorized by Nancy Pelosi. I thought it was a pretty effective argument.
You know, John, I watched all the congressional hearings, and I don't know if I missed something, but that was the first time I heard that as well. And you know what I really liked about that lawyer? His name escapes me, but he was a very intellectual, kind of like an appellate lawyer. Again, he wasn't gyrating, and he was bringing out facts that they were responding to the House and saying that you have not done what you need to do in order to issue compulsory process. And I was like, yikes, wow, this is the first, if it's true, that I'm hearing it, because that is, in my mind, and it's the first I'm hearing it, an absolute defense. If they are saying you have not done the prerequisites of what you can do in order to subpoena and require compulsion of witnesses and documents, that is a very strong defense in the case. And this is one of the reasons why I'm saying, if in fact that's accurate and they have the data to back it up, which I imagine they did or they wouldn't say it, that you may want to pull back a little bit and reconnoiter tonight and say, wow, guys, we hit it out of the park. Those 3 senators or 2 or 4 or whatever they are were not convinced that they should get these witnesses because we did such a good job today. So, you know, when you stand well, an old judge, Judge DeStefano, told me once when I won an objection in court in a homicide case, and I still argued afterwards, he brought me out in front of the courthouse. He showed me something in Latin. He goes, you know what that means? When you stand well, stand still. In other words, shut up and stop making arguments.
All right. Mike, you know, when Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, was sort of dragging her feet on impeachment, she was saying, it's a very serious issue and it could politically split the country. When you take a look at a Monmouth poll that was taken just before the Senate testimony began this week, this country is very much split. The numbers. Now that he's been impeached by the House, do you think Donald Trump should or should not be removed from the presidency by the Senate? 49% say he should. 48% say should not. Only 3% say they don't know. This country is very much split on this whole question, Mike.
Well, it is. But, John, what's fascinating is we just popped up some data on Axios.com showing how little any of these big indicators have moved over the course of this trial. So that 49% figure you just showed of people who wanted the president impeached and removed. You know what it was in September when they began this process? 47. There's some that now have it 51. Very little movement, mostly right there in the margin of error. Look at the president's approval rating. What was it when the impeachment inquiry began in September? 42.5, 42. What is it today? 43, unchanged. The president's approval staying at 42%. And the other one, also unchanged. It's moved around a little bit. But Joe Biden, as the national frontrunner 2020, also unchanged. I just checked Real Clear Politics as I was sitting in your very luxuriously appointed green room, John, and he has a 6.2% lead in national polls. So those three big measures, which are really a snapshot of the country, unchanged through these many months of amazing news.
It's luxurious there because Washington, D.C. gets all the money. That's how it goes.
Fizzy water.
Real quickly, the votes may or may not be there for witnesses, but are the votes there for impeachment at this point? I want to get that thought from each of you. Bob?
I don't think that the votes for impeachment are there, and that's why I'm saying what I'm saying, that they should stand still. Look, the Democrats did a very good job at presenting their case. It was very professional. But what this comes down to is your jury, and we already know where they're at. We have a forecast of it, so don't mess that up. So I think right now, if you were to take a vote, there would not be enough votes to move forward with this, and that's why they should really consider slowing down, continuing in a very professional way, if at all, and letting those people that are already making the decision not to move forward with it stay there before you do something to mess it up.
Mike, what does your crystal ball say?
John, not only are there not votes to remove the president, to convict the president, at this moment, all our reporting indicates there's not a single Republican vote to convict the president. At the moment, President Trump would not lose a single Republican senator based on what all the Axios team can learn up on Capitol Hill.
Mike Allen from Axios, Bob Bianchi, former prosecutor. Thank you both.
Happy Lunar New Year.
And to you as well.